Hey guys, Technomentary here with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the iPhone XS Max with the iPhone 8 Plus and a head-to-head comparison between these two devices. We're going to take a look at the hardware, the software, the overall performance of both of these phones running on iOS 14 in 2021. We're going to break everything down that you need to know between these two devices, whether you're upgrading from the 8 Plus to the XS Max, or whether you're deciding between these two devices, what can you expect in 2021, and is it worth buying one or the other. All of that and much more in this video, so stay tuned. But before we go ahead and get started, if you guys are new to our channel, we do a lot of tech news, reviews, and giveaways, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you guys are in the market for one of these newer phones or looking to get a discounted price instead of paying full retail price, make sure you guys check out the link in the description section where you can score these phones at a great discounted price. So let's go ahead and get started with today's video. So first thing between these devices, let's talk about the release date of both of the phones. So the iPhone 8 Plus here, as you can see, I have the space gray edition of that, and it was released in 2017 around the annual September timeframe that Apple released its flagship phone, whereas on the iPhone XS Max here was released 1 year after that. It was released in 2018 around the September timeframe. So 1 year difference between it, and a lot has changed. It actually evolved into what you can see here just by looking at the display. A lot of changes that we need to discuss in this video. Of course, a lot of that change is thanks to Apple's move away to all screen versus what used to be known as the top notch and the home button. So those are just physically in the front screen, you see that difference between these two phones. The other thing we want to talk about is that both of these phones kind of did a lot of change around the naming as well. As you know, the iPhone 8 Plus is the last generation where Apple used the plus. So there was iPhone 6 Plus, 6S Plus, 7 Plus, 8 Plus. But starting with the iPhone 10 lineup, like the XS Max here, Apple has gone away with using the plus naming in its lineup. Now they call it Max. So every iPhone after the 10, the 10S Max, 11 Pro Max, even the 12 Pro Max, and we suspect Apple are just going to go with the Max naming convention. So that's the major difference in names between these devices, but they're the equivalent in terms of size. And as you can see, both of these phones are pretty much big phones. If you have bigger hands, it's probably easier to hold on these. If you have smaller hands, you might have a difficult time holding it. As you can see in my hand, these phones look really big and it might be hard to handle. And let's take a look at the actual weight of both of these phones. Well, both of these phones physically weigh about the same. As you can see, both side by side, they're about similarly just a little over 200 grams each, so it weighs about same in your hand. You'll notice right here we have two different colors here. Both of the phones actually come in each other color. So here we have the silver or the white color one that you see, and the space gray edition. There's also the gold edition of both of these phones that you can get at, but here the gold is slightly different. The XS does have the rose gold, where the 8 Plus comes in just the plain gold. So that's the difference. You'll know is that the gold is slightly different, but not by much between these two devices. And besides that, let's take a look at the build of both of the phones. Both of the phones, as you can see, very big noticeable difference between it is the camera. You have both 12 megapixel dual camera on both of the phones, and with the iPhone 8 to 10 transition, you see it's going from sideways to more up and down. So Apple redesigned that and also moved the flash right in the middle where it used to stick out in the past before. Of course, both of them have that shiny Apple logo, and at the bottom here where it has the iPhone label on it. And side-to-side comparison, you notice they have around the same sort of body size. If you hold them together, you notice the same thing as well here. They almost are equivalent in the size-wise. They're not getting one thing or another. One thing we do want to talk about in terms of the hardware build of these are they're using slightly different material. The iPhone 8 here is using aerospace grade aluminum body, where the iPhone XS is using surgical grade stainless steel. So different body. It's supposed to be a little bit tougher than the aluminum, but as you can see here, both of the phones does have front and back being glass, which means they're able to charge wirelessly. And if we compare the body, you'll see both of the phones have the same set of speakers on the bottom. One thing you'll notice when you look at the side is the XS Max here being more reflective in terms of the bezel here, thanks to that stainless steel, where the iPhone 8 here has that matte design on it. So that's one thing you'll notice between these two devices. And let's talk about the phone's display here. As you know, the display has changed between these quite drastically. Just by looking at it, you can tell that the iPhone of these display also makes up why there's so much difference between the display here. And the display we're going to talk about is the iPhone 8 first. The iPhone 8, as you can see in my hand, has that's 5.5 diagonal widescreen LCD IPS technology. That's just Retina HD display, and it has around 1920 by 1080 pixel resolution at 401 ppi on it, and it also has 1300 to 1 contrast ratio. But if we look at the iPhone XS Max here, a lot of differences here. First of all, it's actually a 6.5 diagonal all-screen OLED display. OLED display on this phone is very different from the LCD display, and hence why we want to talk about the price point between these two phones. The original price point on the iPhone 8 Plus when it was released in 2017 was around $699 for the base 64 gig model, where on the iPhone XS the base same 64 gig model costs $1099. So almost $500 difference because of that OLED display that Apple has kind of introduced and mentioned that it's really harder to produce, and it made the price jump up quite drastically. And besides that, because of that OLED display, things like the resolution has gone up on the iPhone XS Max. It has one of the higher resolution density for any of the iPhones. It has around 2688 by 1242 pixel at 458 ppi, and it also has this amazing 1,000,000 to 1 contrast ratio. So those are the difference between the display. Of course, there's similarities between these two display. For example, both of them does have true tone display. They have white color display, 3D touch to it, so that's that 3D touch feel that you get when you hold it and press. And they also have pretty much same amount of max brightness, which is 625 nit of brightness on both of these two phones. And the other aspect we want to talk about between these two phones and hardware is the storage configuration on these two phones. We mentioned both of them does start with the base 64 gig, but as you go in the higher model, the iPhone XS, as you can see here, we have the medium grade storage capacity configuration model, which is the 256 gig, and that's the max that the iPhone 8 Plus can have. But the iPhone XS Max here can go all the way to 512 gig storage capacity. So if you're really looking to get the max amount of storage, XS Max is where you're going to be looking at. And let's talk about the battery of both of these phones. What kind of battery life can you expect out of the iPhone Max here and the 8 Plus? Well, a couple of things you're going to expect is the iPhone XS Max has one of the bigger batteries we've seen on any iPhone. It has around 3174 mAh compared to the iPhone 8 Plus, which still has a big battery. If you really compare other devices, it has 2691 mAh. So almost between these devices, 400-500 mAh differences. Because of that OLED on the Max, it does consume up a lot of battery, and this is where a comparison would be better to tell you guys how much video playback you get between these devices. The iPhone 8 here gives you around 14 hours of video playback, and the iPhone XS Max also that has here gives you 15 hours of video playback, although it has almost close to 400-500 mAh bigger size battery. Doesn't really give you that much battery life when it comes to video playback. And talking about hardware, another hardware piece that we can't miss is, of course, the chip on these two phones. What kind of chip do you have between these two phones? Well, the iPhone 8 here, as you see, Apple has the A11 Bionic chip. And along with that, the next generation of improvement on chip on the iPhone XS Max is the A12 Bionic chip. Of course, one thing we don't really talk about, but is the neural engine on these two phones. The iPhone 8 was the first generation of the neural engine, where on the iPhone XS Max here has a second generation of neural engine. And in the end of this video, we're going to talk about how much faster that means for the iPhone XS Max compared to the iPhone 8 Plus we have here. And lastly, we want to talk about water resistivity of both of these two phones, which are slightly different. The iPhone 8 here that we have, as you can see, has a body that is able to do a water resistivity with IP rating that it's rated for is 67, and bump up on the iPhone XS Max is IP rating 68. So one different, what does that mean? Well, the 8 here is able to go 1 meter for 30 minutes, where the Max you're able to take it to 2 meters for 30 minutes. What does that really mean in comparison? Well, both of the phones are water resistivity. It depends how deep you can take it. But one thing you want to note, if you take either of the phones for a dive, you're going to be expecting that because both of the phones are all glass front and back, if you have the back which can easily shatter, or the front or any kind of crack, either of the phones are not waterproof. They will get water compromised, and you're going to be running into issue of having a water damaged phone. And let's talk about the software of both of these two phones. As you see here, both of the phones does have iOS 14 ready to go install. As you can see here, we're looking at the app library, big icons like the app widget, things like you're being able to customize the back tap and much more out of both of these two phones. So iOS 14 runs stable on both of these devices. So if you're worried that either of the phone can't support iOS 14, well, both of them can support iOS 14. One thing though, we're going to talk about the software update between these two phones is that iPhone 8, since it was released in 2017, luckily it is able to get the iOS 14 update. We suspect it will get another 1 to 2 year of major updates. So we'll probably see the iOS 15 on it. 16 is a little iffy. We're not sure if iPhone 8 Plus will get it from Apple, because Apple usually goes around 4 to 5 years on a phone to support the major update. Where the iPhone XS Max here, it's probably going to get another 2 to 3 years of updates. So of course, much more of the updates coming on the XS Max than the 8, just because of the release date. One is of course newer than the other one. So you're gonna expect, if you're looking for a phone to get more out of it, more years out of it, you're gonna be looking at the XS Max here. And let's talk about overall app performance between these two devices. We mentioned both of the phones, if you're looking to do for basic gaming, social media, productivity to your financing, to entertainment, to your information, your reading, your shopping, and all of that, both of the phones does do a pretty good job in terms of that. One thing we're going to say though is between these two devices, if you're looking to do heavy gaming, this is where the CPU and the hardware is really tested between these two devices, is that you're going to find if you're playing basic game, both of the phones does a phenomenal job. But one thing you notice is once you start going into playing games like PUBG, Fortnite, or games that are meant to be graphic heavy, the iPhone XS Max is definitely the one that you want because of those better specs on it. You're able to support it without heating up. Like the iPhone 8, when we did some game testing, and noticed that it heats up a little bit faster than the iPhone XS Max. And there's a little bit of lag on the 8 compared to the XS Max. But between these two devices, if you're using it for basic calling and texting and light browsing, both of the phones will get you through the day, no issues whatsoever, because both of the phones are still great phones even in 2021. And finally, we want to go ahead and conclude between these devices, why might each one be better than the other one. Let's talk about the iPhone 8 Plus. Why might the iPhone 8 Plus be your choice, or why would you buy the iPhone 8 Plus? Well, first thing is that it still has that fingerprint to it. So if you miss that fingerprint and like that feeling of that, having that haptic touch to it, and to do kind of unlock your phone, the iPhone 8 proven to be pretty durable and stable in that area. Also, the other thing you'll notice is something you might not notice is the iPhone 8 Plus is actually 6 grams lighter. So if you're really looking for a phone lighter, but a plus, the 8 Plus is a little bit lighter, not by really that much. It is 0.3 millimeter thinner than the iPhone Max here that we have. And the other thing you'll notice between these two phones is the 8 Plus. Of course, the price you're coming in right now, you're probably going to be able to score this under $250 compared to the iPhone XS Max, which probably goes around for or $450 to $500. So paying almost double the price between it. Nonetheless, the iPhone XS compared to the 12 line up, of course, gives you a lot going on to it between. So if you're willing to spend a little bit more or just really thin on budget, the 8 Plus still gives you that iOS feeling. It still is going to be updated for another 1 to 2 years, and it's still going to be pretty relevant for you, and it has that big display. So that's something you want to consider if you're getting the iPhone 8. But why might you get the iPhone XS Max? Well, a couple of reasons that the iPhone XS Max is better than the iPhone 8 Plus. First thing first is the power. We mentioned that it has a bigger battery for standby mode and where you're using it for calling and texting, you get about close to 19% more battery power to it. And that's not only thing you get. The other thing you get because of that OLED display is that you get this 13, almost close to 14% higher pixel density. You get that on that iPhone. You get about 1.6 faster resolution as well, thanks to that and OLED as well. And if we talk about the hardware, the other aspect we want to talk about is that the iPhone CPU on the iPhone XS Max, we have seen it be around 6.15 faster speed when you do some speed tests against the iPhone 8 Plus. And the last thing internally that Apple doesn't really advertise is the RAM between these two devices. The iPhone 8 here has 3 gig, where the iPhone XS Max is bumped up to 4 gig of RAM. So a lot of power going on. And then the other thing we're going to talk about the storage configuration. If you're a person that has tons of video and photos, lots of apps, lots of things going on, and you really use the phone to the max capacity and need that extra storage, you're going to go with the XS Max because it has that 512 gig max storage. And lastly, in terms of speed, the iPhone XS does have 1.7 faster download speed when you do some testing on it. And of course, between these two devices, the iPhone XS Max comes pretty close to feature-packed phone like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is the latest Apple flagship phone, but at a premium of the price. You're paying around, $400 compared to almost $1,300 if you bought the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And we haven't seen so much difference between the 12 Pro Max versus the iPhone XS Max. So that's pretty much our review of these two phones. Between it, one's a budget-friendly phone that still has a lot going on for it, but the other one not as budget-friendly, but comparing to the newer phone, it's budget-friendly and tons of power-packed feature that you get on the newer phones. So hopefully this video is helpful for you guys looking to buy either of these phones. We want to hear from you guys if you guys upgraded from one to another or currently using one or another. What do you guys think about it? Leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.